Cloud.
So many buttons.
So many buttons. Okay, well, welcome everybody. Welcome to a little lunch and learn session with Long Island Women in Tech. My name is Jean Hannon. We have Stefana Muller, the founder of the group, on as well. So we're very excited. I'm going to take a moment and just do a quick introduction of our group and then introduce Jamie in our discussion today. So Long Island Women in Tech, for those not familiar, is a not-for-profit founded a few years ago by Stefana, and there's now over 400 members, women and men as well, mostly from tech, but at Friday's Coffee, there was even a yoga instructor, so we're pretty open to all people and really all backgrounds across Long Island and members beyond. And as well, all career levels. So our goals are really, I guess, threefold. Mentorship of young women starting their careers in tech, mentorship of women transitioning in or out of tech. We're also interested in networking opportunities, whether it's in-person events or a session like this, a quick Zoom meeting. So today I'm really excited to introduce Jamie Morningstar. She's willing to share her experiences of her tech career and beyond with us, which I think is a super exciting, super brave thing to do. So thank you, Jamie. Jamie currently works as in engineering at Qualtrics. And just briefly on Qualtrics, since it's been a big week for that company.
Yeah, it's been a big week for Qualtrics.
It really has. Like, I couldn't have timed this better, Jamie.
No,
so
it's perfect.
For those of you not familiar, we're not going to focus on Qualtrics today, but I strongly encourage all of you to check them out on your own. They are leaders in experience management. I am working on a project with Qualtrics right now, which is how I connected with Jamie. The people there are super smart. There's a lot of data analytics, text analytics, visual graphics. It's really a very, very interesting tool to measure experience across customer experience, employee experience. So this week they were purchased by SAP, $8 billion purchase. So very big things are happening there. And but Jamie is coming to talk with us today about her long and interesting bio of tech career and also much more. So I guess with that, Jamie, I should let you share your story.
Well, fab, thanks so much. I'm gonna just stop my video just so that I don't eat up my bandwidth. It shouldn't be a problem, but one never knows. And then let me share. Can you see the slides?
Yes. And everyone, you'll have questions. We do want this to be very conversational and dialogue-based. So Jamie's going to share this, and then I'll unmute. But at any time, just send a question in the text chat, and we can interject. I'll monitor that.
Yeah, that'd be great. And if I miss it, just yell out if I miss something in the chat. Perfect. Well, hi, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. My name's Jamie Morningstar. And so today I just wanted to share a little bit about where I am and how I got where I am and some surprises along the way. So this is me. This is the only headshot I can cope with. I'm an engineering manager at Qualtrics. And before that, I've also served in product management. I've been at Qualtrics for almost 5 years. Mostly in product management and then also engineering. I'm 39. I have my Bachelor of Arts in Computer Science from St. Mary's College of Maryland. I have an MBA from BYU. I was born and raised in Maryland, so I'm an East Coaster, but a Mid-Atlanticer. I'm quite a Yankee at heart. And I've been married to my high school sweetheart for 20 years. We have 4 kids, 2 boys and 2 girls. Oh, I do like them. They're aged 7 to 9, or 9 to 17, sorry. I have 2 by birth and 2 by adoption. While the kids were little, my husband was the primary caregiver at home, and I've always been the primary breadwinner in our family. My husband was a stay-at-home parent when the kids were itty-bitties, and he was a ski instructor in the winter. And now that our kids are school-aged, he works part-time at Sundance in their IT department. I live to cycle.
That is very interesting, Jamie, that you have, did you and your husband, do you mind if I interject the question once in a while?
No, not at all.
I'm just so curious, but did you was that by design, or did it just fall into place and all of a sudden there's just so much going on in life with 4 kids that, that you both made a decision?
Super great question, because it happens kind of both ways to different people, right? For us, it was by design. It was by design. My husband's degree is in elementary ed. So I like to mention that he's a professional stay-at-home dad, a certified stay-at-home dad. And so really early on, so our youngest was born actually my senior year of college, which was faster than expected. And because I was pregnant like that, right? And so I was 21. And so we decided right then that when, as long as things were going according to plan, that I would work and he would be the primary caregiver at home. And we made that choice for several reasons, and it was definitely a joint decision. One was that just temperamentally, it was a better fit for him. He's a nurturer, he's a caregiver. And so that made sense in terms of kind of our own personalities and sort of pulses. There were financial considerations. His degree was in elementary ed. He's a certified elementary teacher, and that was not going to provide the same way that computer science did. And so we were clearly aware of that. And we felt like, although certainly not required, it was going to be ideal and most convenient for one of us to stay home when the kids were very little. So like I said, he would work part-time during the winter. He ski instructed. It was great to get out of the house to go pursue something that's outside the home. But he was and has always been the primary caregiver in our family by choice.
Wonderful.
Yeah, it brings its own challenges for sure. But it definitely brings its own joys too.
Yeah.
Any other discussions? It's a challenge. It's a really interesting thing. I mean, we don't see it very much. I'm in Utah, so it's a very these are all very conservative sort of family roles wise, and in all other ways. And so we he was on his own really. Like there were no like stay-at-home dads groups and it was definitely challenging.
Well, it's important to, see that it's not like you're doing it all on your own. It takes a big network, and we have to all be aware of how to create the support that's needed to have both a career and a family. And that's a great option. For me, I also have 4 children. I had both my in-laws. So my husband and I were able to continue working, and we had our his parents with our kids. And I mean, it was just such a blessing. So, all right. So thank you for sharing.
No, absolutely. And I do agree. It takes a network, whether it's a blood network or a marriage network or a network of friends or trusted caregivers. It absolutely does take a village. And then I love to cycle. I road bike. I love to ski. Ski season is starting this week in Utah. And we camp a lot in our 87 Volkswagen Vanagon. And I cycle commute to work year round. So, I love to advocate for women in technology. I love to introduce girls to the possibilities that exist in studying computing and computer science. So that's a big passion of mine and something that I do a lot of work in. I helped to found here at Qualtrics 3 years ago. We founded our Women's Leadership Development Group here at Qualtrics to help both attract and retain, develop, attract, and retain women, specifically at Qualtrics and in our technical community.
We have a note here from Dana, lucky lady. I love to road bike too. So thank you, Dana.
Ooh, yes.
It's good to have that. And one of the things that's I think such an overlap is the group that you started at Qualtrics, where you're really doing mentoring of women in technology at Qualtrics. And one of the things is if you can think and work into the discussion here, you know, this is a group that's always interested in what kind of career opportunities there are. So with everything going on with Qualtrics, especially with the acquisition by SAP, you know, are there opportunities in a company like Qualtrics to work remote, or do you really find that most people are kind of in Utah at the main campus?
Great question. Yeah, so Qualtrics, we have offices all over the world. So we have 20 global offices. Our engineering is based in Seattle. So we're founded in Provo, Utah. We have engineering offices in Seattle and Krakow, Poland. So those are our 3 engineering offices. And then we have sales and client success additionally in Dallas. We have some enterprise sales out of New York and DC. We have a small DC office. Raleigh, North Carolina is a new one for sales and client success. And then Toronto. So we do have multiple offices throughout the world. We don't tend to do a lot of remote work except for enterprise sales. Most of the engineering and client success work and implementations are based in one of our global offices. But yeah, we're growing like gangbusters. It's amazing. Quite the ride. And my other area of passion is in adoption and orphan welfare. So I adopted daughters from Kazakhstan and China, and that really sparked in my heart, you know, a new level of care for the world's 210 million orphans. I lead 2 annual trips to Colima, Mexico. This will be our 7th year doing orphanage work trips in Colima. And I'm also involved, I serve on the board, I chair the board of Creating a Family, which is an adoption nonprofit. So that's me. And this was definitely not the story that I thought I was writing in high school. Y'all, you know, you probably understand the path of the high achiever, especially the East Coast high achiever, right? I was very clear on what my path was after high school. I was going to go to college, get my master's, start a career. So after the second job, maybe get married, maybe start a family, right? Like that was the path that was in front of me. And it was very clear and I was good with it. Like I was totally on board with this path. And then halfway through my freshman year of college, I realized that it wasn't the path for me. And this was like personally terrifying to realize that my high school boyfriend was the man I wanted to spend the rest of my life with, that the path that I had gladly accepted wasn't the path I wanted to be on. And so I started to realize little by little that the dreams and the goals, the grad school, the marriage, the career, the kids, making a difference in the world, it could also happen, but maybe it didn't have to happen in the sequence that I thought it needed to be in. So as much to my own surprise as to everybody else's, I was married at 19. I had my first kid at 21. I finished my computer science degree at 22, and it was off to start a career. Oh, is there a question? Let's see.
No, I was just reflecting on your statement. No questions.
Okay, sweet. And it was really, really hard for me to wrestle with those preconceived expectations. Again, I was kind of following the default path. And it wasn't a bad path, and it wasn't the wrong path, but it wasn't the best path for me. And I really had to do some hard work to get to the whys behind my goals, right? I wanted a family, I wanted a career, I wanted to impact the world. And those were based on really healthy priorities and healthy desires. But it took me a little while to figure out that I could still accomplish those goals with choosing a less traditional path, or maybe more traditional, depending on your point of view. And so my real lesson there was that there was nothing wrong with the social norms. There was nothing wrong with my own expectations and other people's expectations. That my goals and my dreams and my standards and my convictions were really good things, and they were worthy of holding tightly. But I needed to be more flexible in the order and the timing of those decisions. I was lopping off paths. There was this whole constellation of opportunities available to me, and I wasn't even considering them because I was so locked into this path that I thought I was on. So more about surprises along the way. How did you kind of
think about, like, I think many of us can relate to being locked into a path. And when you talk about social norms, to really just doing what we think we're supposed to do, or finding ourselves so far along the road to completion of something. Like, I have a friend who I think is a lawyer only because she has a law degree, and not because that's really aligned any longer to her interest, but so far along a path of getting vested in something that you just, you know, maybe this dangerous curves ahead is, but how did you get kind of make your decisions and find your path?
We'll talk about that a little bit
Okay.
in the coming wiggly path of my story. But for me, it's been a continual struggle to break out of what I'm doing and to understand why I'm doing it and why I value those things. I knew I wanted to have a high achieving career, for example. And I had to break it down and figure out why. Like, why do I want that? You know, some part of it was financial stability. You know, I wanted financial stability. Well, okay. So then, if I got married at 19, could I still, you know, does that impact my path to financial stability? And so I had to deal with that and decide, you know, does it impact that value that I have in a negative way? Or is it possible to be financially stable and still get married? And so for us, it was, we could do both. And so I realized, oh, you know, the path that I'm on, in pursuit of financial stability, well, okay, the financial stability, like, that's fine. That's a good goal. I can achieve that through other paths. So that's been kind of one of my big life lessons, is just getting to the why behind these goals, right? Because my goal isn't a high achieving career, right? My goal is global impact. My goal is financial stability for my family and those I love. My goal is earning money so that I can do something really cool with it. My goal, like, what are those? Why? Like, why and why and why? Not just what.
Do you, like, to be very, very tactical, like when you're kind of grappling with a decision like this, do you write it down? Like, what tactics to answer the question why? I do. I need to write things down. Sometimes I need to write things down in the middle of the night. Like, I just wake up and I'm like, and in the morning, I don't even understand what I wrote, but, you know, I just needed to get it off of my mind.
Yeah, I write
a lot. And I think when I write. Yeah.
Yeah, I do. Well, writing is thinking. And I fundamentally believe that writing is thinking. And so I think fishbone diagrams, like, they're as simple as they are, just super useful to challenge myself, to just get to whys, to help, to give me a construct to work through.
That's a great tip.
It's very low tech, but it just helps to challenge me with why I'm struggling, or what the why behind the goal that I have.
Yeah, thank you.
No, absolutely. Okay, so dangerous curve. So 6 years ago, I was an engineering manager at a local startup, and it was really, really fun. And we were going fast and spending fast, and then we spent really, really fast, and the money ran out. And 1 month, the company announced a 60% layoff, and 6 weeks later, it was another 50%. And so I was laid off in the process, and I was 11 months pregnant at the time. So, you know, a little above normal gestation. So I have 2 kids by birth and 2 by adoption. And in adoption, paper pregnancies fall somewhere between sort of like giraffe and elephant gestation periods. Mine fell squarely in sperm whale territory. Our adoption process for our first daughter took 15 months. So this was 2 months before we're going to travel to adopt our daughter, our oldest daughter. And when I was laid off, I was devastated. I was rocked at every level, right? There was all the normal stuff of the rejection and the fear, and how am I going to, you know, as primary breadwinner, how am I going to provide for my family? And then there was the added, as if that's not enough, there was just this added overlay of what is this going to do to our adoption process, and will we still be able to adopt? So my husband and I sat down to figure it out. And I contacted my previous employer and I was able to negotiate for longer COBRA coverage. So I had health insurance. And once I had health insurance, then I was suddenly able to be a lot more flexible in what I was doing because I didn't have the fear of health insurance. Income was still kind of important, but at least I didn't have to worry about health insurance. And so I had, at this point, I had been working in software companies for almost a decade, and I had seen the opportunities that were open to somebody with a technical background and with the skills that I had. I knew that my background and my interests would transfer really well to product management, but I really hadn't tried it. And so this looked like a really natural progression to me. It seemed like a really good fit. It seemed like a place where I could really make a difference to my teams and my company. I wanted to try it out. And what I had to get over was that trying product management wasn't about like getting off the engineering ladder and getting on the product management ladder. I was pretty, I'm goal driven and achievement oriented for better and for worse. And that brings a lot of crap with it. And so, the kind of the way I was viewing things was like, I'm on this engineering ladder and I'm climbing up the engineering ladder and look how good I am on the engineering ladder. And suddenly, right, the engineering ladder got kicked over because my company folded. And so, once I was able to kind of get my head around, maybe trying product management, maybe it isn't about getting off the engineering ladder, moving over to the product management ladder, and now trying to climb the product management ladder. Maybe I could do this a different way. I knew that it was a risk, and I knew it was a stretch. And I knew things were going to be complicated because we were going to Kazakhstan in just a couple of weeks. We were going to be there somewhere between 4 and 8 weeks to adopt our daughter, and I had no control of the timing or the length of that trip. So I ended up pursuing consulting, which was something I never had really considered. But it was a really, really good fit for that time in my life because I could try on the role for size. I had flexibility in my employment. I could leave whenever I needed to. The people I was consulting for were fine if I was leaving because they weren't paying me for the time that I was gone. And it ended up just being an exceptionally good fit for this really challenging time in my life. Eventually I ended up signing on full time with the company that I was consulting with. But I consulted for 6 months, and it was a really, really good opportunity for me to experiment because I could try on the role and I had the flexibility I needed for that time in my life. So it's one of those examples where I didn't necessarily choose the risk. Well, I didn't choose to have to look. Right. But what looked and felt and was truly a super, super scary time ended up being a really cool opportunity for flexibility when I needed it most. I could try out another path. And once I sort of caught my breath and stopped weeping hysterically and panicking, I could get my head off of I'm on the engineering ladder, and instead I could really just look at it like a jungle gym. And that's really one of the big things that I've taken. I'll pause after this, but that's one of my big life lessons. It's a Sheryl Sandberg thing, but it's been really transformative in the way that I view my career and my options, to the point that we were talking about earlier. That my life, and especially my career, are not ladders. They're jungle gyms. And it's so easy for me to get lulled into believing that I'm on one path, that I'm on one road, that I'm climbing one ladder. And it just doesn't work that way. The problem is that when we get ourselves into that tunnel vision, when we think there's only one way up the ladder, there are two problems that I've experienced with that. One is that when something happens to that ladder, like we miss a rung or the ladder gets kicked out from under us, or we find, to your point about your friends, we find that maybe we don't even really like that ladder. If we're looking at our lives as a ladder, then it's a really scary experience when there's some kind of interruption in that ladder. And then the second thing I miss out on when I view things as a ladder, as a single path, with that tunnel vision, with those blinders on, is that I missed some amazing experiences that are to my right or to my left. So I'll pause there, but I really, one of my big life lessons is that our futures are really a constellation, right? They're not a tunnel.
And that's a great, moment to pause because Julia has a question. So Julia, I just unmuted you. Do you want to?
Oh, hello. So my question, I'm curious to understand how you found your first consulting project, and what were the challenges, and did you find there were any? Do you have any advice on how to convince a potential project employer of your skills if you haven't already demonstrated those skills?
Yeah.
How did transition?
Yeah, I was worried about that. I think, well, at least for me, most of my worry is pretty groundless worry. It's unknown fear worry. It's not really grounded worry. And so what I ended up doing, so again, I was so worried about how the heck was I going to find full-time employment when I knew I was going to be gone for 2 months in 2 months, right? And so as I was looking around and looking at opportunities, I found that there were some local consulting firms that were listing positions. And so I signed with a firm that was placing consultants. And then they signed me on for a specific position. But I interviewed with them for a specific consulting position. I'm telling the story very poorly, sorry. And so it wasn't short-term. They were doing long-term placements, but still consulting-based placements. That was a good fit for me. The nice thing, and the thing that made it easier to pivot was that they, because they were the ones placing the placing consultants, I really only needed to convince them that I was worth taking the risk on and trying, because then they were just going to place with the employer. The employer it's really kind of no risk to the employer because they can drop the contract if they're not pleased. So I had just a good relation. I was able to forge. I didn't have it beforehand, but through the interview process with the consulting firm, I was able to talk about my background in technology. At that point, I had earned an MBA as well, and how I saw those things coming together to really form effective product management. Because I had done a lot of project management in engineering leadership, it was a pretty natural transition, or at least I was able to sort of tell a story about the natural transition that could be. So that was my experience. I didn't sign directly with the company. I signed with a consulting firm that was then doing long-term placements with the company, and then the company itself at the end of my consulting contract ended up hiring me on.
Excellent. Okay, yeah. Thanks for that.
That's helpful. So I would summarize what you've said as if you're looking at the jungle gym and career transitions, if you enter through a consulting role, it's lower risk. So if you put yourself in the standpoint of the hiring person and you're not an exact fit, do it some way where it's low risk, and then take your skill set and create the story of how that skill set that you have is actually applicable. So yeah, that's how it worked for me, and it worked really well. And again, this was not a purposeful choice that I made. Well, it ended up being, but I kind of found myself thrust in this situation, and then I realized over time, maybe this could actually work out, and this could actually be a way to lower the risk both for me and for somebody taking a chance on me, to your point.
Mm-hmm.
That's great. We have from Dana, not a question, but just throwing out there, she can 100% relate to what you're saying. She's also experienced layoffs and is looking for a job, is in the middle of a job search, and just appreciates you sharing this. And I think we all do, because, sometimes from the other side, it feels like my struggle is so hard and everybody else has it so easy, and they have this ladder and it's all figured out and it's working, and I'm, on the wrong path. I mean, you're on a jungle gym. I think I'm down
and I
the
messed it up
block.
somehow. Yeah.
I can't even find the jungle gym. So it's nice to share. Thank you. So this was lesson 1, and there's more.
There's more. Okay.
There's more.
So my second lesson is really to leverage my strengths and cope with my weaknesses. There's a really cool video that I'll send out after this that I love, that's published through Lean In. Video is kind of weird over Zoom, so I won't show it. I'll just summarize it for you. But you know, again, you know, as a high achiever, as somebody who's been told that I'm really good at a lot of different things, it took me a really long time to learn that, and I'm expecting that many of you are in the same position. It took me a long time to learn a few lessons. The first lesson that's in this video that I love is that our weaknesses, so in the business world, right, we often categorize our weaknesses as areas of opportunity, right? It's a way to soften it. It's, you know, this is an area of opportunity. It's a growth opportunity for you. And that's bullshit. Your areas of opportunity are not your weaknesses. Your weaknesses are things you have to cope with. Your weaknesses are areas you probably have to grow in, or at least find a way that they're not going to be limiting, but disproportionately limiting. But your weaknesses are not your growth opportunities. Your strengths are your greatest opportunities, and your greatest opportunities are your strengths. And that took me a really, really long time to learn. I'm not sure, I'm just a little sick. But, you know, both strengths and weaknesses matter, right? Like, we kind of have to cope with them all. But my best energy needed to be in growing my strengths. That I was more valuable to the world and more valuable to my employers by really putting my chips on my strengths and building those and developing those. So this, I love, you know,
I love the Venn diagram.
I love myself a good Venn. And there are many versions of this Venn out there. But this is, you know, and this is something that I have to relearn kind of frequently.
Yeah.
So a few months ago, I decided, so I'm at Qualtrics, I'm doing well, I'm in product management. And a few months ago, I decided to move back to engineering as an engineering manager. It took me a long time to make that decision because I was still growing as a product manager. I was learning, and we're moving really fast, and I'm learning really fast, right? But some of the things that were becoming a bigger part of my role in product management were things that were really, really effortful for me. They were friction-y things. You know, there's hard work that's kind of low friction, and there's hard work that's high friction. And more of what I was doing was becoming that kind of high friction hard work. I was doing more customer facing stuff. I needed to write more kind of executive briefs and things like that. And it wasn't what I loved. I love making engineering teams wildly successful. And so while I could do those things, while arguably I was good at those things, I started to recognize that those weren't strengths for me. Those weren't things that strengthened me, and they weren't my greatest opportunity. Mm-hmm. So I was in that bootstrap part of that Venn, right? I was doing stuff that I was good at. I was doing stuff that I was getting paid well for, but I was working really, really hard at it. And again, like, we work hard at our strengths and hard at our weaknesses, but it's a different kind. It's that kind of striving, bootstrapping hard. And I was doing that too much for too long. So I decided to make an opportunity for myself and started talking to the engineering group, which of course I was partnering with all the time as a product manager, but to see if I could move a little north in the Venn, north from bootstrap into that, you know, what's phrased here as utopia, where I was at the intersection of things that I love, things that I was good at, and things that the company needed. So, you know, again, it was kind of a different view of the jungle gym, where I needed to recognize my strengths, the things that were strengthening me, and put more energy into those as my greatest opportunities. So that's my more recent story. I started as an engineering manager on October 1st, and it's been really, really good. It's such a joy to be in a place where I feel like I'm leveraging my strengths again.
Yeah, I think this framework is so clear, and it's not an exercise that I've done with these exact titles and looking at the overlays in this way. So I will be doing this exercise this weekend. And I think there was some feedback to very positive feedback. The group's on mute, so we're not all sitting in the same room to chat, but you're getting yeses and exclamation points. Amen. I love that. Great point. I had a mentor tell me this 3 years ago. The idea of focusing on your strengths, and then the idea of taking that and using this model to really kind of find out, you know, focus on your strengths. Sometimes, no, I can tell you everybody's strength I've ever met. My own strengths, I don't really know. But when you look at this chart, I can kind of think about how I could approach myself and understanding what my strengths are, and maybe reaching out to trusted colleagues, such as the folks we're getting to know on this group, to help with that exercise and get feedback. And I think the point you made about you can do it, but it didn't really feel good, that bootstrap part, I think that's so important, because I feel like, I know for myself, I spend probably too much time in that area.
So this is a hard one for me, because I don't think, to your point, I don't think there's a line, right? Like, there's time you have to do things you're not strong at.
Yeah.
Like, that's work. Okay. And so for me, it was about finding that line where I was recognizing more that like there was more and more of my time, more and more of my energy is probably a better way to say it, was going into those like really like striving really hard work, really frictiony work, mental friction, like emotional friction. Yeah. And so for me, it's not, you know, I think you spend time in every part of this then, right? Like, we don't get to orchestrate every minute of our day. And sometimes we have to work in our weaknesses. But I finally got to the point, we had done, for my story, we had done a reorg here and had done a little bit of redefinition of the concept of product management. And so I immediately recognized that it didn't seem like this reorg was going to be good for me. I thought it was good. I thought it was wise, but that I didn't think it was going to be a good fit for me. And so I kind of set a timer. I mean, you talk about kind of practical tips here. What I did was set a timer, and I was like, all right, if I can transform my my current job into, well, this now reorged job, into something that I feel really strong in 6 months, we're good. Like, I'm gonna give it time. I'm not gonna like jump ship right away. I'm gonna give it time to all settle and kind of settle into place. And then once things had settled and things were it was still really bootstrappy for me, that's when I realized, okay, it's probably time to keep looking. And this kind of gets to my last one. It's my plug for Qualtrics and just for finding a great employer. But you know, I was just so grateful and so blessed 5 years ago to join this company, and even, you know, a few months ago, looking for a new opportunity. Like, when you can find a company that supports you both in looking at the jungle gym and leveraging your strengths, like, that's just an amazing thing for me. You know, that really has been my experience at Qualtrics. There are, I like to say there are plenty of struggles and challenges that come with high growth, and there are struggles and challenges that come with low growth companies. You know, I'll take the high growth challenges any day, because they've just provided more opportunities for me. So those are my major talking points, and we can open up to more conversations. It's been fun. It's been fun conversation so far.
I know, this is really great. Thank you for sharing all that. My dog is barking in the background, so I'm going to mute once in a while. But what questions do we have out there from the group? While everyone is thinking, I certainly have a question for you. So you mentioned lean in twice during this discussion. So what are some of the other kind of sources of materials that's been really inspirational and sort of formative as you've been kind of coming up with lessons learned?
Yeah, so lean in, absolutely. It was a really pivotal read for me as I started to recognize both sort of my opportunities and the, you know, almost like responsibilities. You know, Sheryl Sandberg's really big on this, that we have to some degree like a moral and ethical responsibility to lead. as diverse members of the technical community. And so that was it's a great treatise on why it matters. And so then the other book that I love, there are actually two other resources that I dearly love and that I use a lot. The first is I Know How She Does It by Vanderkamp. This is a great book. I love this book. So we call this session Big Careers and Big Lives. That's the premise of I Know How She Does It. What she did was she did a time study on 100 women who have both big careers and big lives. And the way she proxied that was make more than 100,000 and have more than one kid. Right? Plenty of other ways to have big careers and big lives. That was her proxy. And she did time studies to see how women are making these big careers and big lives work for them. And my big aha, it's a great book. I definitely recommend it. But my big aha from I Know How She Does It was that we really need to back up and look at our time management from a wider perspective. That it's easy. So I'm reading this chapter. I'm on the plane. I had been gone for like 24 hours. It had just been a whirlwind. I was working a ton. And so I'm feeling all the mommy guilt of being a working mom and traveling as much as I do. And so I'm reading this chapter, and she's talking about how when we back off, when we look at a single day or even a single week, often our weeks are out of balance. And I hate the word balance, because balance makes it sound like lives and careers are at odds, like they're opposite ends of the spectrum, and that we have to like find some balance point between the two. And so when we look at a single day or a single week, even, they're often going to be like crazy, right? You've had a big project, your user conference is coming up, you were traveling, things are way slanted one way or the other. But when we back off, and my experience is even when I just back off to looking at my calendar on a 2-week basis, I recognize that the mosaic of tiles that we have, like we kind of think of each, think of work and me and family time as different colored tiles and rest as different colored tiles. When I back off and I look at it more on like a 2-week basis, I realize that it's a really cool mosaic, that I really love the way my, like all these aspects of my life are integrated and are building just a really, really cool picture. And so my story, to finish my story, as I'm reading this chapter and feeling all the mommy guilt of being gone for, 36 hours or something, is that I realized, and tomorrow, the next day, my girls and I had planned on, I was going to leave work early in the afternoon, and we're volunteering together to help sign people up for a bike ride, road bike. We were signing people up for a bike ride, and we were going to go to the bike shop and do it together and do it together for a few hours. I realized, oh my goodness, I focused so much of my time and my, sort of my like weird masochistic desire for guilt on these last 36 hours. And then if I look forward to the next 24, it's beautiful, and I'm focused on my family for these wide swaths of time. And so my big takeaway from that was just to back off and look at the whole mosaic of my life, not to look at a single day or a single week. That was inelegantly stated. I definitely recommend the book.
Okay, I'm going to read it. It's very similar to a book, Pick 3. And I just was at a book reading by Randy Zuckerberg. She's Mark Zuckerberg's sister. So, but she says pick 3. So in any given day, you can either concentrate on work, family, yourself, sleep, or, one other item, community. Yeah. And you can't do all, but maybe you can get 3 in. And I think it's a good segue to Mark, who has a question. Mark, are you available to ask the question?
Sure. Yeah, I am. I just, it's funny. I'm the only guy in here, but I share a lot in common. My wife has a career as well, and so we're constantly juggling. And so I managed to do a lot of stuff with the kids as well as run a business. And so it's challenging. Any strategies you have to kind of balance? I mean, you mentioned that, volunteerism and stuff. Anything that you try to do on a regular basis that you find is helpful, or?
Yeah. So I have two big things that I try to hold here. One is twofers. I love the concept of twofers or threefers, where I can use my time to accomplish, to actually fill things that are in multiple of those buckets that you mentioned. So for example, I ride my bike to work. So riding my bike to work, I love because it gets me outside. It gets me a little bit of exercise, right? So I'm getting something in the self-care bucket. It's also a time when nobody can demand anything of me because I'm on a bike. What are you gonna do? And so it's a time that's a little bit of me time, just thinking time, and then also it's exercise, so it's self-care. And then it's also breaks between kind of the segments of my day. So I look at bike riding and I realize like how many things that cycle commuting kind of checks off, or the buckets that it fills in my life. So for me, like cycle commuting is a threefer. I do a lot of stuff with my kids. And so, for example, I don't end up working on weekends a ton, but sometimes it happens, right? And so something that my daughter and I have started doing is going to Starbucks on the weekend, and she'll read. So my oldest is 11, my oldest daughter's 11. She'll go to Starbucks and read, and I will, and I'll go to work for a couple of hours, and it ends up being a treat for her, right? What I view as like, oh, crap, another mommy fail, I have to work on the weekend, right? Now we've transformed it into an adventure, and she gets to go to Starbucks, and we get to have some kind of grown-up time, and I get to finish the report that I didn't quite finish, and it's a treat. And so something that I view kind of on my own, if I'm viewing it in my own myopia, I view it as a mommy fail. If I look at it as a twofer, it transforms into something that's actually really cool. So I'm a huge fan of twofers. It's the only way I survive. And then the other thing that I learned more and more is just about the importance of creating margin. I absolutely believe that the magic happens in the margin. The relational time that we have, the time that we have to take on just a really like fascinating project, or a project that really drives us or intrigues us at work. The hallway conversations that end up becoming transformative in someone's life, or open up a new opportunity to partner. That magic happens in the margin. And I, left to my own devices, I will fill my whole piece of paper and leave no margin, right? I will fill it and fill it and fill it. And so I have to mindfully train myself to create margin, because I believe that the magic happens in the margin, and I need to train myself to value it. So I actually, part of my journaling every day, you talked about writing, part of my journaling every day is I write the magical things that happen in the margin, the relational moments or the self-care moments that happen because I made space for them. Because I have to train, I'm so jacked up, like I have to train myself to look for those. Because left to my own devices, I will only reward myself mentally and emotionally for things crossed off a list. And I need to train myself to value the margin.
I love that. When do you journal?
My gosh.
Are you journal at night?
That was
I know,
like
Stefana. Perfect. All right, segue to your question, Stefana.
I'm sorry, I had to unmute because you just said I will only reward myself for crossing things off the list. And I swear to you, everything in my book is a list. I'm sorry, I'm over emotional on that one. And I'm so glad you said the margins, and now I'm getting it. It took a while.
Yeah, and the lists matter, right? I still need the list, right? We still need to prioritize. But for me, like I only like reward myself for those list things, and that's messed up. That's not right.
That's not right.
So how do I do it? I journal in the mornings just because it doesn't happen at night. I think ideally I would journal at night, but it doesn't happen. So I just do it in the morning, and I write the things that that my margin. So it's usually relational moments and margins from the previous day, and I try to find 2 or 3.
Nice. I'm writing them down. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to send you a text when I do it so that it gets done.
I would love that. I love
it. I'll check it off my list.
It's been a good discipline for me. Again, like, I mean, I understand the irony of saying do another thing so that you do fewer things. I get it. It's jacked. I'm so messed up. But for me, it's been a really transformative habit to train myself to value that relational time and those margin moments.
Awesome. Well, I have a question for you. Sorry for interrupting your whole thing, but I had to like scream out loud when you said that because it really resonated.
It was great.
So my question, this is something that I had to do probably 3, 4, 5, maybe 30 times in my career. How do you back yourself up and see the forest through the trees in your career? Because you have like a really good reflection of that jungle gym right now, right? How do you get out of the weeds sometimes and back up to do that? I have trouble doing it for myself. I can do it for any of you on this call, right? Because everyone always calls, Stefana, can you help me with something? And I'm really good at that. I'm terrible at doing it for myself. So how do you do that?
So I have only done it at moments of crisis. Or maybe only is a little strong, but you know, I think moments of crisis force us into it. And that's probably when people call you, right, is when they're in moments of crisis, right? I can't take it anymore of work. And I finally hit that threshold. There was a reorg. I got laid off. I got a new boss and it's just not feeling good, you know, whatever, right? So moments of crisis are wonderful opportunities to back up. And I agree, like we don't, like we spend our lives in the forest. There's nothing wrong with that. And we don't need to be like daily backing off from that. Then we would be paralyzed. And then the other thing I use are anniversaries. Like for me, my work anniversary is in May. And so every May I take some time I write a thank you note to everybody that has been just really pivotal in my journey over the last year. And I take a little time to just consider where I am, where I'm going. Where I'm sitting on that Venn diagram. So anniversaries for me work as a really handy, you know, a really handy trigger maybe to doing that. But I agree, like it's not a thing you need to do monthly. But I think once a year is a really good timing. Once a year and crisis.
And crisis.
Depending on how often you take it.
Thank you. I appreciate that. That's a really good tip.
Well, I think, Jamie, we're at 12:56, so maybe we should wrap it up now. I would like to say thank you so much for sharing your life philosophies and then all of these practical tips to really thinking and improving how we go about our career and our life. So I certainly have found this to be very helpful and very interesting.
It's my pleasure and privilege. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Wonderful. Well, thank you everybody for sharing an hour with us, and
happy Friday.
Helpful.
Thank you.
Woo-hoo, it's Friday. Thank you.
Enjoy. Bye. Thank you. Have a great day.